right, we're going to get back into our foundational documents. Yesterday we did Declaration of Independence, so make sure you watch that video if you haven't already. The second document that we're going to be doing is Articles of Confederation. Okay, this one is not often cited, so I could see you kind of looking at them and going, okay, Constitution, that's really important. Fed 10, sure. Brutus 1, only anti-federalist argument. 51, 70, 78, yeah, okay. Letter from Birmingham jail. I know that like the back of my hand because I thought the fishbowl activity was going to count for 1 trillion points. Okay, it's easy to overlook this one, so I want to take some time to go through it and make sure that we're all squared away. So without further ado, let's get into the Articles of Confederation. First and foremost, this is a hastily enacted centralized government. It's our first constitutional form of government. The Articles of Confederation are a constitution. They're just not what we consider the Constitution. And we've declared our independence from Great Britain, this tyrannical government that we feel was violating our rights. So we abolish our relationship with them. We get rid of the ties that connected us. And yes, we have to fight a revolutionary war. But the other question becomes, well, what type of government are we going to have? And there's not a ton of thought given to this. I'm not trying to minimize, this form of government because it was our form of government for quite a while. But they have bigger fish to fry. They're trying to fight a war against Great Britain, the preeminent world power at the time. And basically, if you think about not only for the purposes of, pragmatism, but also the purposes of why they just got rid of Britain, they kind of let the states do what they want to do. And so this Articles of Confederation creates a decentralized league of friendship amongst the states. Yes, there's a federal authority, but that federal authority has no real power. And there's only one branch of government, which is Congress. There's no federal executive. There's no federal judiciary executing the laws and interpreting the laws. Totally up to the individual states. So the only thing Congress can really do is make a law. Now, if you dig a little deeper and you look at that, every state, regardless of population, is equal in the federal Congress. Okay, the most populous state and the least populous state each get one vote. Okay, they can have more representatives, but they only get one vote. Then you move on and you look at how the laws are passed or what percentage you need. 9 out of 13 states had to agree on enacting legislation. That is an extremely high bar in order to get a bill passed. Okay, well, maybe we should amend that. Well, 13 out of 13 states were needed to amend the Constitution. That's impossible. Okay, it makes the document too rigid. You can't change it. Okay. On top of that, Congress had no real authority. The only reason this League of Friendship existed was to prevent foreign invaders or foreign influence against the 13 states. There's no real idea given to individual rebellions, which we'll get to in a second. And a lot of the involvement of individual states, whether it came to raising funds or raising an army, was basically on a voluntary basis. So, I joke there at the bottom that this document's a hot piece of constitutional garbage, but it does get us through the Revolutionary War and we win. And it does teach the framers, the founders, what they need to improve on when they sit down to debate and write the Constitution. So this was just a step too far in the other direction. And we're going to have a debate at the end of this in which we decide how strong do we need to make the federal government in order for it to be effective. Okay. So what is the inciting incident that kind of brings the end to the Articles? Shays Rebellion. Daniel Shays, this poor farmer in Western Massachusetts, fought during the Revolutionary War. Him and many other farmers like him in Western Pennsylvania are losing their land. The economy during this time period, during this post-war phase, U.S. is paying off all of their debts. Individual states are responsible for kind of paying back what they borrowed during the Revolutionary War. And these wealthy bankers in Eastern Massachusetts, who own a lot of the land or who own a lot of the banks and capital, therefore, kind of hold the cards. So these farmers that go to them take out these loans in order to tide themselves over between, planting and harvest. Their crops aren't worth anything. They're producing too much, and you have this huge supply and limited demand during this time period, and the farmers are going into debt, and they're defaulting on their loans, and the bankers are having the courts in the individual states, in Massachusetts, for instance, seize that land as collateral. And these farmers are ending up in debtor's prison. They're losing their land. And don't forget that land equals your right to vote during this time period. So they're losing their political voice as well. They can't even change the system. So you really see this microcosm of kind of moneyed elite in the eastern cities taking advantage of these Western farmers, and the farmers' reaction is to rebel. So they take up arms. Because that's what they did against Britain when their rights were being violated. They take up arms. They march on those Eastern bankers, and the Massachusetts state government tries to quell the rebellion. But the reality is they need federal help. They ask for federal help, and basically the federal government doesn't have any legal or constitutional way of dealing with this issue. They can ask other states to volunteer their troops, their militias to put down this rebellion, but most of those other neighboring states view this as a Massachusetts problem, not as an American problem. So aid is never sent. And if it wasn't for the capturing of Daniel Shay's battle plans, he might very well have seized a state armory, including cannons and powder that change American history. But the rebellion is put down. But the message is pretty evident that the federal government needs to be stronger in order to deal with not only external threats, which the British, the French, and the Spanish were still posting troops on our territory, on our land at this time, but also internal threats as well, rebellions, okay, which are not uncommon in a new nation. So that is the inciting incident that gets a lot of the framers to realize that the Articles of Confederation need to be fixed. They need to be amended, okay? That's important, though, that a lot of the framers were not looking to create a new government from day one, okay? They wanted to try to fix the Articles. But it quickly becomes apparent that that's just not practical, that's not going to be something that's going to work. Remember, 13 of 13 states had to approve any amendment, and the framers quickly realized that instead of this being a patch job, instead of them trying to fix this broken thing, they need to scrap it and start over. So we have our Constitutional Convention, and now you have this debate at the convention between anti-federalists who want to preserve some of the core principles of the Articles, decentralized government, more rights given to states and individuals, and less to this federal authority. And federalists who say we can still do that, but we need to create a government that can respond to threats in a timely manner. And you have this debate now, or the stage set for this debate between those two entities, between those two thoughts of how best to run a government. So how could I see this being used on the AP Gov exam in regards to your preparation? Any question that deals with the relationship between federal and state authorities, the Articles are a document that you can use to say this isn't how you do it, okay? One branch of government that's largely toothless, that leaves the execution and interpretation of the laws that it creates up to the states doesn't work, okay? So that's the first way, okay? The second way, the importance of a bicameral legislature. If you look at the Articles of Confederation, unicameral, every state's equal, one vote. That means big states and small states are equal, all right? And it sounds like, oh, the states are equal, but you're dealing with a population of 12 million having the same representation as a population of 2 million, okay? And that's not fair. The importance of separation of powers amongst three interdependent branches. Again, the Articles only have one. We're going to realize that you can't leave it up to the states to execute and interpret the federal laws, that you need a federal executive and a federal judiciary to do so. And lastly, the supremacy clause. Um, in that sphere, in that area where the federal government has authority, um, they have to be able to force compliance among the states, or else you don't have a federal government. You effectively have the same problem as existed under the Articles. Okay, so take some time, think about any more potential uses for the document. Make sure you're filling out your graphic organizer as far as different topics that might show up in the argumentative essay, and we'll get to the Constitution, which will be maybe split up over a couple parts in the next few days. Bye bye.